You unlock this benefit with the key of Patreon. Beyond is another dimension. A dimension of thought. A dimension of speculation. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both waffle and substance. Of things and ideas. You've just crossed into the podcast zone. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Trekking Through the Twilight Zone. We're still going through all of our little twists and turns, and as always, I'm being joined by Julian Darius. Julian, how are you doing? You okay?
I'm doing all right. I wish for us to have a good episode.
Yeah, well, we're going to be talking about The Big Tall Wish. This one's an interesting one. It's about a sort of an aging fighter who is going to try and make a comeback and has had a tough time of it, about to step into the ring, and just when it's all going wrong, he's lying on the canvas, a small boy makes a wish and switches around, so he's no longer the one on the canvas, his opponent is, and the world sees him as a champion and he's ready to make his comeback. But these wishes, they only last if you believe. And because he doesn't believe, it doesn't last. So, Julian, what do we think about this one?
Yeah, I don't like this episode. I just don't like it. I don't like the Peter Pan wish that Tinkerbell is alive and whatever. I just do not like that. The boxing thing could be interesting. You know, it sort of reminds me of Matt Murdock and his father and stuff. But then I find myself thinking of, other stories that do this better. I will say that Twilight Zone's so white.
Yeah. This is an interesting sort of I don't know, there was something about this that as it started, because the thing is, there's some relationships in this that I was like, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. So you get the fighter, what's his name? I forget, but he's this aging fighter, and he has like a relationship.
Jackson.
That's it, Bowley. And he has this relationship with this young boy, and he's sort of like a mentor, like a father figure for him, because it's not this completely innocent. Like, he's not trying to come on to the mom. He's not trying to do anything. It's literally just he has fallen into this sort of father figure sort of role to this boy within this tenement building. And so I was like, okay, great. So we're going to have this thing. We're going to have this exploration of this relationship. It's going to be based around this. And then obviously when he goes boxing and this kid making this wish, and instantly I was like, well, they've known this kid for years. Has nothing else ever happened where they're going to start questioning this wish? It's just now. And if he can wish, why are they living in this crap hole? Mm-hmm. Like, it seems really bizarre. Like, this kid's only using this wish on other people. Like, because I assume it's this kid's power. Because there's no third party put in. There's no third party here. Like you said, Tinkerbell, but there's no sort of like, angel figure or any other genie or anything like that. It's literally just this kid grants his wish, and he seems to know the rules about it. So I don't know why he hasn't been like, I'm going to grant a wish so that me and my mum can live in a fantastic house and have this and that. It's like, it doesn't seem to work. So it sort of falls apart for me quite quickly, this episode does. And even though at the end of it, like, I was expecting sort of, again, for it to twist and to be that the adult figure was like, no, you have to win fairly, or there has to be some sort of consequence, like you can't wish everything away. Nope, never gets addressed or nothing like that either. So it's
Yeah, I mean, the end of the episode is just that you get old and sort of give up on believing in magic, right? Yeah. Except magic is real in this universe, which is so regressive and so silly. I mean, I'm not opposed to a story involving magic, but a central premise that magic is real and we just don't believe in it enough is so offensive to me. It makes no sense. And I found myself thinking, like, if that's your point, are all kids magical? Is this really just this one kid and just all of us used to believe in magic and make these wishes? I mean, some people still do. It's called church, but
I think this little boy, he's got The Shining, and he grew up to go work in work in the kitchens at the Overlook Hotel. That's the only thing I can think of.
I like how you're working this into the Stephen King universe here.
It came into my head. I was because this is, and I know that sort of King in particular has been guilty of this and accused of it. Is that sort of like the mystic, the mystic black man, or black person, sort of like magical black person figure.
Yeah.
And this episode seems to be like the epitome of that. Of like, here's this little boy, and he seems to have all the rules. A kid knows all the rules about this wishing power. But like no one else seems, it's never come up before.
Yes.
And it's never sort of like he's never had to explain it before.
Well, and that's the key thing is that it's not just that it plays into the so-called magic Negro, but that also the kid is not only magical, but he knows those rules as if he is. I mean, that's such a part of that trope is, as if he is this sort of sage figure. I mean, it's interesting that I found Rod Serling said that television searches for new blood. It's overlooked a source of wondrous talent, the Negro actor. And even though this seems like, I mean, it seems remarkable that this is mostly an all-black cast, but this this episode and a few others that use black actors were considered so revolutionary that the Twilight Zone was awarded an award for outstanding contributions to better race relations in 1961.
Wow.
Like, it must just blew people's minds. They're like, oh my God, like all the main characters are black enough. Couple episodes.
Do you know what? That didn't even cross my mind watching this. I was just like, oh, they're going to tell this is going to be the story of this neighborhood, like this perspective. Like it didn't even cross my mind. And I suppose that's a good thing. That we have come a long way. That like you say, I wasn't even thinking that. Like, oh, it's an all-black cast. Like, yeah, there are shows that do that, and it's fine. But like, yeah, wow, okay. I suppose it's 1961. It's a very different world in there. Just you're talking 60 years ago. So, wow, fair enough.
Yeah, it made. I noticed it immediately. I was like, and then my immediate response was to think, oh, we really should be. I think we probably have noted it a couple times, but we really should be noting every single episode. Like, this is not a very diverse cast.
Yes,
over and over.
Oh yeah, no. As we go through, waspish would probably be even an expression. It's not just white; it's waspish in some cases. Yes. The thing with this thing about though is it even you say it's a diverse, this obviously is a black cast. I would say it's it's not particularly an ethnic story. It's not trying to tell like an African American story. It's more of a this could be any any cast, any group. But it is interesting. It doesn't sort of focus in on that. But it's more. But I don't know. Maybe I'm now looking for something like the fact that, and again, I'm going to tread very, very carefully on here. But it is a single woman. It's a single parent, and it's in this sort of the neighborhood is, they comment on the fact that it's not a great neighborhood and this other stuff. So there is that part of it, and that's not to say because there are other episodes where they'll do it with white characters and stuff where they'll have them in sort of like crappy places. But yeah, that's interesting, really.
Well, it's interesting to me that they're clearly poor and in a bad neighborhood, right? But what's interesting to me is, the previous episode is about a murderer, and basically there are three main characters beyond the bartender in that episode. There are two murderers and a scientist that we know nothing about, who is really stupid, apparently. And in this one, there are really three main characters. But what's interesting is they're good people. And I think that, obviously this should not be a shock, but just the depiction of a black man who is so he's a boxer. That was one of the more accepted professions for Black excellence has always been sports, right? In a racist culture. But he's depicted sympathetically. That kid is depicted sympathetically. And in fact, he cares for people in the building, who he's not related to. And it's a very wholesome depiction in a very sort of like warm, they're just like us kind of feeling. Yeah. Like you can imagine people in 1960 going like, oh, those Black people, they were really nice. They were just like us. They live in a tenement, but they take care of their neighbors, and they're good people.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of it in that perspective, and it would be bizarre to have that mindset of like, oh, this is different.
There's no mammy character. There's no like,
No. Yeah.
Not to say that this should be the standard of inclusion or something, but you could see this going in other directions where.
But again, it comes back to thinking like, what's the point of the episode? Again, sort of, the cast are actually is pretty good. I don't want to call the showdown, but the discussion between the little boy and Bowley towards the end is interesting. Because when what the wish does, it does give Bowley this confidence where he now believes that he is the one that won the fight, and he's like, no, it was me, I'm the champion, I was the one that did this. And when the boy's like, no, it was a wish, it sort of comes down to this thing of like, well, not really. There was this magic, but you have to believe in it. But you also, by believing in it, you have to acknowledge that you didn't do this.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And that's quite an interesting thing of sort of like as an adult, it's like, I can't believe in that. I have to believe in myself, because that means that I have to accept that I had assistance and it was from this magical thing. And I think that's quite interesting because the kid's like, you've got to believe, and he thinks he's doing the right thing, but weirdly, he's actually, by doing that and giving Bowley this glimpse of being the winner, but then telling him, well, you didn't really do it on your own, sort of undercuts him, sort of stuff, and sends him back. So it's this interesting. I like the idea of, like, the rest of the episode doesn't really go into it. It's just this final conversation I really like, of being an adult and having to sort of like, there is this thing of asking for help or acknowledging help, of like having to show that you have to stand on your own, you have to be a man, is kind of not heartbreaking. It's not done well enough to be heartbreaking, but it's definitely, I empathise and sympathise with the character, to this acknowledgement of having to say, in this world, I have to prove, not just to myself but to others, that I did this on my own, and then to acknowledge that you had help it can be difficult. So I kind of like the ending of where this goes.
I think that's a really fascinating point. I think that in my viewing, at least this time through, I didn't really see that, because I saw Bowley as so humble throughout, right? That he knows he's probably going to lose. He knows he's washed up. He stares at the mirror and sees all the scars, and he knows that he fell down. He, breaks his knuckles, and he still goes out there, and he knows he's going to lose. And I just thought he was such a humble, sort of pitiable sort of character, that when he defies the kid and says, no, I did it, I was great out there, there's definitely ego involved, but I sort of read it as more of a sort of rejection of the magic theory, rejection of this kid's wish, that sort of causes him to retreat into his ego. But, not to hang too much weight on this episode, which we both agree isn't amazing, but and I don't think that this is necessarily intended, but if we dovetail this with the fact that this was a racially progressive episode, there is this thing of like, I mean, how do we read that wish, right? There is this way in which, like, it's not a wish to escape the circumstances, but it's a sort of wish for pride if we see the black boxer as an acceptable realm of black excellence in 1960, then this is a wish for this good guy in your tenement to have success, and it's not underlined like you're going out there for all of us African Americans. There's no moment like that. There's no bell hung around this, but I do think that it's interesting in that context and how that wish then disappears, right? Like we're stuck here, but then in other ways, you can also read it as you are about his ego sort of getting in the way, and read it as maybe not as progressive as we might.
Well, no, I wouldn't say ego is probably ego, yeah, but I'd say dignity. It's the moment that, for me, the moment when he walks home, when he wins, or when it's wished and he wins, and he walks home and everyone's like, cheering him up and like, yeah, well done, you're the man. It's less about ego, it's about dignity. He feels like he can hold his head high. Like he's been humble because he's been humbled. Like life has humbled him. And then he gets given this moment where everyone's like, actually, no, you were, you did it. You Rocky Balboa'd this thing. You went off and you stood it and whatever. And then for some kid to be like, well, no, you didn't. I think it's less about ignorance. I think it's fear. He's like, I had this dignity. I had this moment of self-worth, and it's now going to get taken from me. Like it's fear to me. It's not less ego, more fear. Like, like I had something and I'm terrified of going back. However, it's not like, like you say, we're never showing this ego, because when he does lose, he has to face the consequences of that. He still goes back to that apartment. He still goes in and sees the kid, and he's still that sort of trying to be that good mentor figure.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not about we can still be good people and have these moments where you're like, dignity isn't always about winning. It's not about being cheered. It's about doing good things. And the fact of the matter is, if you really want to take it to its natural conclusion, he didn't win that fight. He lost the fight. He may have lost the respect of some of those other people in the neighborhood, but that kid is going to remember him. He's going to be a better person for having Bowie in his life. And so that's a good moment to end on. So, it's not the best episode, but there's some interesting stuff to sort of take from it.
No, I agree. And I think that, that sense of dignity ties in with not just poverty, but also race, and having, it ties in with visions of masculinity too, right? A feeling
definitely.
that you have something to be proud of. But I mean, at the end, I don't know that it comes together except in that way that you say, that it I don't think it's good enough to be heartwarming, but as you said, but it is close, right? Especially at the end. And especially thinking about that boy and what a difference having this sort of father figure could make in his life.
This is another one of those episodes where if this was sort of like 15 minutes longer, you could explore some of those relationships before and after the fight, and it would be a lot more interesting. And I think it's too much compacted into a short time, because you lose something because of that. But not a great episode, but still, an interesting one. Not a terrible one. Any final thoughts?
No, I'm good. There's a great essay that we're close to writing about this episode, but we're never going to do it.
Yeah, two white guys writing about the ethnic dignity of 1960s America,
which we know nothing about on so many different levels.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening, and I hope you'll join us on the next episode.